Join us on a journey where we unravel the latest trends, tackle your burning questions, and explore innovative strategies that are shaping the future of compensation, all with a cup of coffee in hand. Hello everybody and welcome to WorldatWork Total Rewards 2026. I'm sure many of you have already followed the podcast, Comp and Coffee. I'm Ruth Thomas, the podcast host, also Chief Compensation Strategist here at Payscale, also leading the marketing teams here at Payscale. And we're very excited today to be here broadcasting live from WorldatWork. We are this year in San Antonio, hoping many of you loyal Comp and Coffee listeners are here too. So I'm looking forward to meeting you over the next 3 days. But joining me today is my friend and often guest on Comp and Coffee, Lexi Clarke. Lexi, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Lexi Clarke, Chief People Officer at Payscale. I'm very excited. It's a little rainy in San Antonio, but other than that, we're rolling with the humidity and we're having a great time so far. So a great 24 hours. Very excited to get introduced to more of our customers and more of all of you hopefully tuning in. So excited for our conversation today.
Let's start off talking about a poll that we ran.
We did. We teed everything up today with a poll where we, I think, do you know the question that we asked, Ruth?
We asked them what were one of the biggest problems they were facing today for compensation.
Yes. And what did we hear?
We heard that it was disconnected tools and systems.
And processes.
54% of you said disconnected tools and systems.
Which was a great tee up, I think, into the conversation today, but also some of the things that we've heard as we kicked off WorldatWork Total Rewards yesterday. I'm going to let you make a very exciting introduction into what we're going to launch and what we have launched already this morning, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit around how it ties into what we've heard at WorldatWork so far.
Yeah, so if you follow Payscale closely, you'll see there's a press release out, and we are today formally launching our Payscale Intelligence Cloud. So this is our unified system bringing together the market-leading modules that we bring to market here at Payscale, along with data, and then our compensation intelligence layer. And we're very proud to be launching this today. We're going to talk a little bit more about what the Payscale Intelligence Cloud is about. But let's talk about what we heard in the intro yesterday from Scott Carwood, who's the CEO of WorldatWork. Do you want to talk about that?
So very exciting. I think number one, super excited for the launch today. This has been a long time coming for us to talk about Payscale Intelligence Cloud. But one of the things that we heard in the keynote yesterday was how important it was not just to have all of our Total Rewards practitioners in the room and live, but how WorldatWork was expanding their partnership with HRCI, again, two organizations that we work really closely with the intent that it's so important to bring the rest of HR along in that journey. That was music to my ears. I know music to our ears as we think about what Payscale Intelligence Cloud really is to us, where it's expanding the movement and the impact that Total Rewards and all of you have every single day as practitioners to more broadly unifying that employee experience from a full HR team perspective. So I'm super excited to talk about how that applies to Payscale and our systems and our tools and everything amazing that you know us to be so far. But that was exciting. I think it was validating for us as we think about our journey ahead and what we're bringing to all of you, and also the experience that we think is so important, not just if you're in a comp or a Total Reward seat, but if you're in any kind of seat within the HR team.
Yeah. So there's 4 pillars to the Payscale Intelligence Cloud that I thought we could just dig into now, let's see. So the first, you've already hit on it, unified experience. So this is really multiple stakeholders in the organization now have to touch compensation. I mean, when I was doing compensation, I kind of secretly locked away in a back room somewhere. I never wanted anyone to know what my actual job was because I thought someone might ask me a question about their pay. That world has obviously changed. We now live in a world of pay transparency. How does that play out in your organization as you look at across Payscale as the CPO and the teams that work for you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like compensation and Total Rewards has been historically really behind the scenes, but in the last, especially since COVID, I think was a big inflection point. We've just seen it continue to gain momentum from there. How that shows up for me is that it's not just my Total Rewards team that's thinking about compensation, it's the entirety of the people team. So that means it's our recruiters that are thinking about it when they're interacting with candidates, when they're bringing an employee on board. For us internally at Payscale, that means we're thinking about our new candidates coming in while we're thinking about our internal people along the way, ensuring internal equity, and that we can explain any pay decisions. It's our HR business partners that are engaged day to day with the business, having those conversations with the business to say, where are your employees today? What decisions do we have to make? What does this mean for promotions or development of talent within your organization? So we've really taken this as like, we've got to have everyone on the same page and thinking about it. And for me, as we've talked about Payscale Intelligence Cloud, and as we've talked about the evolution of who Payscale is, we've really hit on all of those things. And so I'm super excited. I think you can't tell that full compensation story unless you've got everybody kind of singing from the same songbook, if you will. And I think unifying those experiences really brings us that.
So ownership really for compensation management to be successful has to be shared across the multiple stakeholders across the business. The other thing we're talking about with Payscale Intelligence Cloud is data. So we've obviously been building our data story here at Payscale. Our flagship data source is obviously Peer, but we are introducing skills and demand data into our intelligence layer as well over the next few months. So let's talk about skills. Why is skills becoming more important?
Yeah, I mean, skills has been, Ruth and I talk about this all the time, skills has been a word in the HR space for a long time now. And I think, a lot of organizations and companies have really tried to figure out what that means, especially in the world of AI. I think skills are more in demand than ever. I think about data and some of those demand insights that, Ruth mentioned. There's more data than ever at an employee's fingertips. And that's not just data on what they can be paid today, but it's data on, how could they continue to develop in their career? What skills do they need to have in order to go and do, that next thing or that next role for themselves? And I think that, the more data that's available to employees and to candidates every single day, the more that compensation, and again, those complete holistic HR teams need to deeply understand the data to be able to explain that and create a transparent approach to talking about pay, but also talking about trajectory. And I think skills are a huge part of that.
Yeah. I mean, I love what we're building because it's really a 360 answer to the question, what should I pay someone? So obviously, historically, we've always given you amazing benchmarking data, but now we're going to layer onto that demand insights. So how in demand is that role? And then skills insights, like should I be paying more for certain skills? We know skills are evolving at such a fast pace at the moment. So the data story is a really important part of Payscale Intelligence Cloud. Now, another leg to that is scalable solutions. So we have a lot, we take to market a lot here at Payscale, but we've been really spending a lot of time in the first half of this year so far thinking about our customer journeys and our user journeys. Do you want to talk about how we've been thinking about that and how each customer kind of like define their own journey in the cloud?
Yeah, I think that, we, like Ruth said, we've had a lot of solutions over time, and Payscale Intelligence Cloud is really about uniting all of those things together to tell a cohesive story. A big part of that is all of you. So all of you listening in, where are you on your own journey and on your own maturity journey? And so at the beginning of the year, we had a couple great internal teams bring together a customer maturity journey. What that looked like is for us to really deeply understand what are the problems that you're facing every single day. Where are you on the transparency journey with your organization? What data are you using? How large is the organization? How competitive is the market and the industry? And really deeply understanding your problems so that we could make sure that we're fitting our solutions not just to your pain points today, but that we can actually help you to evolve to that next level on the maturity journey. And we can give you a North Star of something to aspire to. I know when we're having conversations, lots of conversations, even as we've been in San Antonio over the last 24 hours, it's not just about, I want to solve my data problems today. It's about, I want to aspire to something bigger within the organization to be that more strategic voice. And I think the maturity journeys really help us not just, again, meet you where you are today, but continue to help meet you on every version of you and your team and the organization for years to come. And that's, I think, really exciting. That's about us internally at Payscale, deeply understanding your problem set and making sure our solutions really fit it. But it's also been really fun internally, I think, to get to know kind of all of you on a persona level and play around and understand. We've used it internally too to say, okay, where are we on the maturity journey? We've communicated that back out as well. So it's been a really fun journey that I'm excited to continue alongside all of the great work that we're doing.
Yeah, the compensation maturity framework that we've used for many years here at Payscale, it is amazing. I love having discussions with customers, around that framework. So the last leg of the Payscale Intelligence Cloud that we wanted to kind of share with you, like messaging wise today, was contextual intelligence. So you'll hear a lot of people talking about compensation intelligence, a lot of vendors in our category. And the way that we're thinking about intelligence in the category is really giving you the information you need to make the right decision at the time you're making a pay decision. So contextual intelligence is something that we're seeking to surface through all the workflows, across our different modular solutions, and make sure that you have that information to hand, because it comes back to the story is different people making decisions at different times.
Yeah, and I think, you hit on something that is so interesting and that we talk about with our CFO all the time, which is what is the context and the story around the decisions that we're making as it relates to pay. And I think so often, we're limited to only some certain kinds of data or something like that. And so much of that context is so important to how we're making those final decisions. I think it also, it feeds into what's the business case and how are we continuing to build a business case to work with those key partners in finance or on the executive team. And context feels like it's like the cherry on top to all the pillars that I think that you walked through. But that context, I think, really feeds that business case. Do you want to talk a little bit around just like forming that business case, and you and I can work on that?
Yeah, so this isn't just marketing fluff. When we're bringing these solutions to market, when we're launching Payscale Intelligence Cloud, it's done with us thinking about the compensation user and the different people that are making pay decisions in an organization. And what we do know is, the world in which we're making pay decisions now has shifted a lot, particularly in the last 5 years. I guess one of the biggest transformations or disrupting things has been pay transparency.
Yes.
Should we start there? Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. I think that, as I think about the business case, a lot of the conversations that we have, whether it's a webinar, whether it's with customers, or whether it's just with any of our users, it's how do I go to either it's an executive team, to my finance team, and make sure that I can actually land the message that pay transparency is important, that we do have to spend X dollar amount in order to make sure that our employees are well paid, that pay equity is important, that internal equity is important. And pay transparency, all of the things that we just talked about, the context of the decision we're making, what are other people doing, the data behind it, and not just the typical kind of data you would think about now, but pulling in things like skills or demand data or any of those things. It's critical, I think, to really landing the business case in a way that your CFO or your finance team or your executive team can deeply understand. They want to see numbers. They want to understand what other organizations are doing. They want to understand the context of where you are within your organization, and they want to understand the why. And that's, I think, one of the things that everything that we've talked about, by unifying all of the different pieces of the solutions and data we've always had into a real cohesive Payscale Intelligence Cloud story, I think it really brings that business case in a really lovely way, and we make it easy for you to understand the business case so you can articulate that well.
And I think multiple stakeholders, having that access to compensation information. For me as a comp practitioner, it's about protecting the governance of your pay structures. And so, it's great today that everybody needs to be able to talk about pay, but I also want to make sure that they're protecting, fairness, equity, and compensation structures. And so that's why, building the workflows for multiple users to be able to access that information and the same information is so important. The other observation, I guess, is around how the way that we do compensation is no longer just an annual basis, basically. The pace at which jobs are changing, new skills are evolving, the pace at which our businesses are having to evolve, particularly with the disruption of AI, compensation run as an annual cycle just doesn't really work anymore.
No, and we've really adopted that internally. One of the things that is always important before we bring anything to life in these conversations is that we've taken and tried it on internally for size and seen how that worked. But I think what you're hinting at, Ruth, is this concept of always on, which sounds kind of, if you're a top pro listening in, that may sound a little daunting and a little scary, this idea of always on and, oh my gosh, what is that going to mean and what is someone going to ask me? But I think what that means for us is that it's not limited to one big annual cycle. That is where a lot of the great work gets done. But it's adopting the other places, like, the recruiting team is making an offer and they need to make a decision on if they're going to be in line with internal equity or if they're going to make a decision that's going to, continue to cause maybe a challenge or is up against the comp strategy. Again, this always on idea is around taking all of those things into consideration in as much real time as possible to continue to push that pay strategy forward. And so as I think about that, it's taking some of the things that if you're a practitioner or a rewards practitioner have felt like pain points for you before, but it's getting the rest of everybody else on board so that they can make those decisions alongside you. And again, that is like unifying our data, unifying our experience, unifying all of our solutions under that intelligence cloud really allows you the view in order to make those decisions and also drive the right conversations with the business as well.
Now, I'm going to think about the third thing. We were talking about why Payscale Intelligence Cloud. And I think the one that's evolved most recently has been this focus on compensation as a strategic lever. And I think, organizations are under so much pressure to be profitable, to be productive, to improve, productivity, and to drive growth. And we are seeing this increasing handoff or relationship between the CFO and the CHRO or the head of Total Rewards, because they're all realizing that as a lever, compensation is very opportunistic for us right now. Do you want to talk about how you're thinking about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've heard or attended any of the webinars where it's or listened to a Comp and Coffee episode where it's myself and then our CFO Philip, it's been really interesting. He came onto the organization a little over a year ago now, and part of that CFO CHRO relationship is to align on how you're thinking about your cost, or more so your investment. For many of you that are probably listening in, and for us as well, compensation is our biggest investment that we make as a business. And so for him and I to be on the same page, speaking the same language, is one of the most kind of strategically critical things that we can do. And we've used, everything that we've been kind of putting into market or thinking about putting into market as an opportunity, I think, to do that. And what that might look like is him and his team thinking about a total dollar amount of what we're going to spend, but then him and I really making sure that we're aligned on where we're strategically investing those dollars. Are we driving the business forward? Can we find ROI together? And it's been a really fun conversation, I think, as even the three of us have talked about it, to say, okay, how do we define our ROI? How do you think about that? Because when you're just kind of in the day-to-day making those comp decisions, pulling out and thinking about that holistic view is really important. Again, I think about that in intelligence as a word is just becoming table stakes for where we are. And also, I think the journey for all of us that we're all on around AI. But really what we're doing is we're taking intelligence and we're harnessing it for power. And I think that's really going to drive those CFO relationships forward, because again, you're speaking with data, you're speaking their language, and you're thinking about dollars on this bigger view. And we're going to provide a lot of different views and a lot of our offerings that are going to allow you to do that in one way, in one platform. And you said unified workflows, and I think that is a huge part of it too, because if it's not just about what you present at the end, it's about the journey to get there. And those workflows, I think, are a huge part of that process.
Great. Well, thank you, Lexi, for joining me today. We've been delighted to share with you the story of Payscale Intelligence Cloud. If you are here at World at Work, please come and see us at booth 243. There we are, just had to be prompted on that. Sorry, everybody. We're all here, Payscalers. We'd be delighted to show you what the Payscale Intelligence Cloud looks like. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. And we are very excited to be launching the cloud today.
Very, very excited. I'm always grateful that Ruth keeps inviting me back for Comp and Coffee. So very excited to be here live. Come say hi in San Antonio. You'll find us with the Tech Teal booth, and some of us are wearing our great bandanas as well. So excited to see you, and thanks for joining.
See you.